tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
You know, interestingly, I just about, 40 minutes ago or so, I was speaking with Jordan Peterson very briefly, and I had said, Jordan, I'm about to go on air. And he says hello, by the way. He's a big supporter of True North. I said, Jordan, I'm about to go on air. What would you tell people is the distinction or the contrast between ARC and WEF? And in true Jordan Peterson-like fashion, he gave a very eloquent and biblical and historical answer that I can't possibly paraphrase, and the room was far too loud for me to record it. But he effectively said, we are wanting to give people freedom to rise up themselves, to raise their communities, to elevate themselves, and as a result, elevate society. We're not looking to just give people what they want or what we think they want. And that was so critical. And you look, I've covered the World Economic Forum on 2 occasions now. And both times, the presentations you hear from the speakers are almost all about them building the world they want and you having to make it happen. Here, we are being empowered as attendees. And I say that because I actually felt, I don't feel empowerment often, but I felt a wee bit of empowerment this morning. Maybe it was something in the punch, but we are being empowered to help build the world that we want for ourselves. And as a result, lift people up. And that is, I think, the biggest distinction between the elites versus the everyman. I would argue generally between the left and the right. And that was one of the conversations I was having with people here. You may know Eva Vlaardingerbroek, who has been an absolute firebrand of a commentator from the Netherlands. I first met her because she was a regular guest on my old friend Mark Stein's show, and I was actually hanging out aboard the Mark Stein cruise with her a few months back. And I was chatting with Eva a little bit about this very trend we're seeing right now towards globalism and what an organization like ARC can do to kind of resist that. Take a look. One of the things you've been known for, I think, contextualizing and criticizing is the rise of globalism. And I'm wondering where you think this comes from. What's the root of this?
Where globalism comes from? Well, I mean, ultimately, people like power, especially people in power, and they like to extend their power beyond what they already have. And globalism, well, what's better than to have control over the entire world? You know, if you can control one country, that's nice. But I think to people who have nefarious intentions, the more power, the better. And then why not on a global scale, right? So I think to a certain degree, it's a natural thing in the human mind to want to expand power. And sadly, I think that there are a lot of people right now who see opportunities there and who package that really nicely and with good sounding intentions. But when we look at how that plays out in reality, it can never really be good.
One of the biggest, and I'd say most disheartening trends is that people who are elected as anti-globalists or as nationalists oftentimes end up disappointing. I mean, you have a number of conservative governments in the UK, in the Netherlands, Italy has been a particular letdown, I know, for you personally. And how do we fight that? Because if you can't even really elect someone in a country that's going to fight against it, we truly are powerless.
Yeah, I've been somewhat, to throw in a nice internet term there, somewhat blackpilled on the political system in general. I mean, yes, Meloni, for example, being a recent case of someone who I've heard personally go on stage and talk about the danger of globalism and really vehemently attack the globalists. And now she's in power, and the one thing that she promised, which was a naval blockade, she didn't do. And Lampedusa is being swarmed with migrants at a record number last month. So it's like, I think probably not putting too much solace and or hope in people who have personal interest within the political realm is a good idea, because somebody who will, yeah, like I said, you know, if you get in power, you probably want to keep it. And catering to the globalists is a way to keep it right now, sadly. So maybe the resistance has to be outside of the system rather than in it.
There's a World Economic Forum class, obviously, people that go to the same parties, they all take each other's ideas, they all take inspiration from each other. Here we're at a forum that on paper is arguably similar. It's a global collection of leaders in various fields, but it's very different. And I'm wondering if you could explain a little bit about why that is, and I guess more importantly, why you're here.
Right, well, so I'm here, obviously when Jordan Peterson announced that he was starting a counter movement basically to the World Economic Forum, it immediately sparked my interest because although I'm not a fan necessarily of centralized organizations, the essence of this is not that. It's actually to bring together people who look at power in a more decentralized, more nationalist way, bring them together to fight, again, a global agenda, right? So it's in essence the opposite idea of the World Economic Forum, even though we do have to conspire together, in order to exchange ideas. And I really like that because of the fact that it's active, we're doing something, and there's a lot of talk on the conservative side, but this is something where people can actually join and exchange ideas and take action and hopefully spread the word beyond social media. So I really like it for that reason. The focus obviously on responsible citizenship is a very different idea than what the World Economic Forum predicates. For them, all of the political ideology that they're based on, everything left-wing anyway, anything neo-Marxist, it's always outside of yourself, right? It's always the system that is oppressive. It's racism or the patriarchy or anything, climate, it's always anything that is outside of your own control. And I think what Peterson opened with today, saying, no, you have agency over your own life and that's where you need to get started, is a really good message and one that we desperately need. So I'm curious to see how this will develop and what will come from, a meeting like this, because it can't just be talking. We need to be wary of that. But I really, really like the idea.
And just on citizenship, one of the more dangerous trends in recent years has been this idea of a quote-unquote global citizen, which I think is an incredibly facile thing to say exists. You can't have citizens without nations, and that's one thing I hope comes up here, because that's really been, I'd say, the cornerstone of a lot of the problems we've seen is the erosion of nations and the erosions of states.
Yes. A citizen of the world is a contradiction in terms. I would say you can't be a citizen of the world. You are a citizen of a particular country. And with that, we're talking about citizenship being limited to your nation state, but also democracy in and of itself is inherent to the idea of a nation state. You can't have democracy on a global level. It doesn't function. So I think that that's important for people to realize, even though the globalist ideas, the ones that we hear, for example, in the Agenda 2030, they sound very good, but the only way that can happen is if there is an active redistribution of your rights, your goods, and in general, all of your basic liberties, really. You can't have a democracy on a global level. It doesn't work that way. And I think that that's something that people don't really realize when they listen to the nice pretext and the pretty words. So, yeah, I hope we'll hear more of that here. But we've only just gotten started, so I'm very hopeful.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.